Today's video we are going to be continuing with proofs, but we're going to go to CPCTC proofs. So we're going to go beyond just proving our triangles are congruent. We're going to prove that pieces of our triangles are congruent. So we're going to start by reviewing what we know. When I look at my given diagram, I see these two pieces are congruent. I see these two pieces are congruent. We know now, we're experts in the fact that I need three pieces. I look at my diagram for that third piece, and there's not a lot that we can take directly from the diagram, but one thing that I can assume from the diagram are congruent vertical angles. So I do have two congruent triangles. I know that these two triangles are congruent, and I know that they are congruent because of side, angle, side. That allows me to say my triangles are congruent. I look at how I named the first one. If I go from R to T to I have to make sure that I go that same way. So nothing, triangle, line. So I go from nothing to triangle, or sorry, not triangle, circle, line. So nothing, circle, line, nothing, circle, line, which means I'm going from K to C to I. You want to make sure that you're going in corresponding order. So to prove those two triangles were congruent, we showed it using corresponding sides, corresponding angles, and corresponding sides. We know that if triangles are congruent, we have three sets of corresponding angles and three sets of corresponding sides. We've only shown three are congruent. You need three to prove them congruent, and then once you know they're congruent, CPCTC gives you three pieces of information for free. So we have to go through our diagram and see what are we missing. What do we know that's congruent now that we didn't know then? Now that we have our triangles congruent, I know according to here that angle T is congruent to angle C. And we see that in our diagram, angle T and angle C. We had our vertical angles, so we also know that angle R is congruent to angle K. And the last thing is those two sets of corresponding sides. We use two sides to prove they're congruent. And these are my two sides I have left. So I know that segment TR is congruent to segment CK. So remember, we need three pieces to prove the triangle's congruent. Once we have the triangles congruent, because all corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent, I get the next three pieces for free. So let's apply this to our proof. And in the end, my goal here is to show that segment BE is congruent to segment BD. So I need these two segments to be congruent. As I begin this, I want to kind of create a plan of attack. There's a lot going on in the diagram. I'm thinking to get those two segments, that means I'm looking at these two triangles. So I think my goal is to show that these two triangles are congruent, and then I can show those two segments by corresponding pieces. So let's start with our givens. We have angle A and angle C are right angles. And we know that because it was given to us. Remember, we use every given until we've shown something congruent. We haven't shown anything congruent yet. So now that I can say that angle A is congruent to angle C, I know that because all right angles are 90 degrees, therefore all right angles are congruent. Now I've proven something congruent. I can mark that off. I make sure that I mark my diagram. Angle A and angle C are right angles. We move to the next given. Angle ABE is congruent to angle CBD. Again, the only reason why I knew that was because it was given to me. And those are our favorite kind of givens because I don't have to do any work. It tells me angle ABE. This angle is congruent to angle CBD. I get a free piece of information of congruency. Now the last one is weird. We are given that ACDE is a rectangle. So we want to think about everything that we know about a rectangle. One of the first things you probably learned about a rectangle is that opposite sides are congruent. So because it's a rectangle, I know that AC is congruent to ED, which is true, but I'm not going to use that piece of information because that's not going to help me prove those two triangles congruent. But I also know that segment AE is congruent to segment CD because the opposite sides of a rectangle are congruent. So we're going to use those pieces. AE is congruent to CD, and we know that because opposite sides of a rectangle are congruent. Now we have our three pieces of congruent information. We go to our diagram, we see that we have angle, angle, side. So we can say that triangle BAE, make sure that we go in the same order when we name our second one. So since I went from B to A to E, I'm going to go from B to C to D. And based on the order of our pieces, we know that they're congruent by angle, angle, side. But that wasn't our goal here. Remember, the final thing that we needed was to show that segment BE was congruent to BD. We wanted those purple segments. So now we can finally say that segment BE is congruent to segment BD. And we know that because corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. That's our CPCTC. One of the most important things that you want to take away from CPCTC proofs are you only know that corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent after you've proven triangles congruent. CPCTC is used to show pieces of a triangle are congruent only after you've proven the triangles congruent. So you will never see CPCTC as a reason in a proof until you have seen one of your three-letter postulates proving the triangles congruent. That is very, 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 very important that you want to take away from our CPCTC proofs. And that is it.